Finance Committee meetings. We'd like to start by having a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't believe there are any public comments. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So we will move ahead. I believe Mr. James is going to give us a review of our Siemens proposal for LPC LMS for building automation. Go ahead.
Good evening. So I wanted to present to you the proposal for the building automation system at our Landisville Primary Center and Landisville Middle School. If you recall, back when we were discussing the installation of the new boilers and chillers at those two buildings, I had mentioned at that time that we would also have the need for the updating of the building automation system in those two buildings. So right now, what would happen, or what the contract would consist of, is it would consist of removing the existing equipment, which is outdated and unsupported. And what I mean by that is that the equipment is no longer being used. There's no longer making parts for it and so forth. So should anything happen to it, it is unsupported by Siemens in the sense that they can't get parts for it any longer. So this would have to be done anyway, but we have held off until didn't make sense to do this unless we were doing the new boiler, adding a new boiler and chiller. So we're proposing to do this at this point. They would install all of the new updated controls to the boilers and chillers, programming them according to our needs for the district, and revising all of the programming for these for both the boiler and the chiller. They would also hook up the hot water heaters to the system so that there's controls to that as well that work in conjunction with the boilers and chillers. And then they would give us any training, our staff, any necessary training that would be needed for working this equipment, and also making any program changes to the future. This would be done summer of 2024 as they're installing the new boilers and chillers as well.
What is the estimated cost?
You'll find that on the addition, or on the attachment, but the cost is $221,500. That is for both of the buildings. So that would be it would be for the two buildings total.
And the old control system is antiquated. How old is that?
Correct. It's from the beginning of since the building
For
was.
both buildings?
Mhm,
Okay.
yes.
So I'm familiar with that kind of equipment. It becomes outdated to where you
This-
can't replace it.
Right,
basically.
the equipment's outdated, the software is outdated, but we've been getting by with it as it is. And I didn't see a reason to change anything until we were going to change a boiler and chiller. Just didn't make sense before.
Do we think there'll be some savings associated with this new control system? Will it help things to be a little more efficient, not run as long? And
Sure. I mean, there's always those options and so forth, but the biggest savings is going to be in the fact that if something were to go wrong with these systems, we can easily replace the parts and so forth, where right now we can't do that.
okay. And what's the guarantee of this equipment? Do you know how long this new instrumentation, how long that I have some kind of guarantee, correct?
It does. I don't have an exact number of years, but I mean, Siemens they're supporting all of our equipment, and so it would be equipment costs. I can find out an exact number
Yeah,
of
if you
years.
could find out what
Sure,
some kind of warranty.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I can let you know that.
Other questions from anyone else?
The
Go ahead, Grant.
Page 10, the price escalation provision. That's a little bit concerning to me that they wouldn't lock the price in at the time we signed the contract. Is there a reason they're not gonna do that?
My understanding is that they have told me they will lock it in. This is, and the big concern right now, this estimate was given to me back in September. The big concern right now, and they have held the cost of labor costs involved. So my understanding is that they will lock it in once we have, signed the contract.
Okay, well then that paragraph needs to be removed before we sign it. The price escalation paragraph on page 10.
So I'll verify that with them, and let you know that prior to actually voting. You're not voting on it tonight, so
Okay.
I will question that.
Thank you.
You said that was on page 10?
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? All right, next item is Mrs. Hall is going to give us an update on the feasibility study.
Sure. So at the last board meeting, we had Steve Behrens from Breslin Architects present part one of the feasibility study. Since you've had some time to digest it, we've asked him to come back tonight to answer any questions you might have, as we're going to ask you to accept this tonight as an action item. In addition, at your seats, there is a part two document, which gives some potential options for several of the buildings that need significant work. And I'll let Steve speak to that.
Thank you all. So yes, what you have in front of you this evening is a hard copy version of the part two, which was presented at the board meeting on the 14th. So this contains the same information, the same options, and they are, as I said, I think it's important to understand that the acceptance of the feasibility study is not a vote to move forward with any particular option. It's just merely an acceptance of the data in parts one and two. Any effort of this type is reflective of a snapshot in time. So it's accepting that this is an assessment and preliminary options that are suitable for the district to move forward with.
Does anybody have any questions? He's here to answer any questions. I think we grilled you pretty good the last time.
It's not really a question, but once this is accepted, and though we're not ready to make suggestions like what to do, but I do think it's important that we start letting the public know ahead of time what our problems are. This is what the feasibility study came up with, that these are our needs, not saying that we're going to go out and say we need a new high school, but saying this is what things we're looking at. So I think it's almost, we have board meetings and we have buildings and grounds meetings, but I think this is something that should be done throughout the district in different small group things in different buildings, just to go through what is needed and this is why, and even present the options, but not necessarily we're looking at the options, because if we don't, it also gives the public, in my mind, a chance to ask us questions too, which they normally don't be able to do in these meetings with it. So I'd like to see something, obviously with holidays around, can't really do that now, but the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I think, and Karen, Ms. Hall will add, there's obviously further deliberation by the board. We need to look at life cycle costs. We need to look at strategic plan. There's a lot more work that needs to be done. And I think maybe even a board retreat we talked about, where we can deliberate this and go down into the weeds and determine what direction we're headed. But it's going to take, I think, 3 to 6 months, I would say. Does that sound right?
To get a plan in place, how we're going to move forward, probably at least that much.
Yeah.
But to Mr. Donato's point, I mean, Mr. Bomerski, you want to speak to that? We've talked about educating, the public and the staff at large.
Yeah, so we've had conversations about starting 2024 timeframe, going around the different areas within the Hempfield community, kind of a state of the district and type of approach to let our community know some of the great things that are happening, but also some of the work that needs to happen. And that includes our buildings and trying to help others understand the kind of the why. Why is the board having these conversations? Why does the board need to come up with a plan in terms of those next steps? Because you do need to get the community as buy-in for this, because it will require a long-term, not only strategic master facility plan, but a strategic financial plan at the same time. So making sure that that information is being shared with the community is critical. So we've actually started kind of building that framework. And now that we have the second part, we're able to now start pulling that together to really refine that. And I would hope then in early 2024, we'll be able to start that process.
Thank you.
Great point, Mike. Thank you. Any other questions for Breslin?
I'll ask a question I always frequently ask when I have people help me with something. What did I not ask, or what did we not ask that you think we actually need to know?
There's a lot of different ways you could go with that. I think the first thing that comes to mind is, I think what we were just discussing a moment ago, the community input, the community perspective, and the community appetite for undertaking something like this. So I think that's a key one. As far and I think you might not know what you haven't asked until really digesting it, and maybe that's where a board retreat would really be helpful in that regard. But there's just a lot of possible ways to go. I think it all starts with the question of what's the vision for the future at Hempfield, and what got us to this point? What do we see as the goals moving forward? Where do we see the community in 5-10 years, and how do we best support that? And this status report hopefully gives you a baseline from which to think about those things.
How did other communities do this? What you just said, cast that vision out.
Through those community engagement type things, the idea of going to the buildings, trying to make it as accessible and keeping the threshold for entry low in terms of kind of taking it on the road, so to speak, to the buildings is always helpful, and garnering that support. And so that then feeds into what the appetite is, what's the community's perspective on what the needs are, and just the questionnaires are helpful, which can be done in advance to prepare for those sorts of events, and then just lots and lots of engagement, through whatever vehicles you can and you have to make sure people show up.
Now, did I understand what you said? I'm not sure I understood on one thing that you said, that we should take groups on tours of the various buildings. I mean, public.
Yes, yes.
Not just meet in the large rooms. Usually we go to the cafeteria when we go to another building. But you're talking about
No, I think
walking them
tours,
through the
yes,
buildings.
absolutely. Seeing it firsthand is a great way to let, because people only see the building that they're involved with in one way or another, either as staff or students or parents, to help them see the overall picture that my building has its needs, but so do these others, and how do we holistically tackle this?
So who conducted those tours?
That varies greatly. But the people who know the building best. are
Basically,
really
the
best.
administration of the building?
Administration of the building, sure, yeah, yeah. Sometimes the professionals are involved in that as well. But yeah, I think that and representatives of the stakeholders in the community within that building. Yeah, every building has its leaders in various constituency groups, so getting them involved is important.
Good tips. Any others? You can
Off the
think,
top of my head, those are the
well, if
those are
you
the
think of any,
highlights.
let us know.
Okay, sure,
Thank you. Thank you for answering that
sure.
question. Appreciate it.
Any other comments, questions? Breslin?
Yeah, you, not so much for him, but just bringing it up again because we saw the costs before and unless Mr. Wakabuth plays the $2 billion Powerball wins and gives the district $500,000 as a donation, we can't afford it all in one shot. So I think it's important to the public to realize this is really a long-term plan. We're going to be able to do X, but Y and Z are still out there that as soon as we pay down some of X or do something, then we can move on. But it's not just build a building and we're done or remodel a building and we're done because it's, you know, it's going to be many years before we're even caught up. And by then, again, some of the, like the newer prototype buildings, even though they're in good conditions now, it's just like homes, you have to replace roofs. And we've already started doing some of that stuff at Morristown and Mountville with the heating and air conditioning systems. So that's, I just think that's why it's so important to get it out to the public.
So are
I-
you,
I think one of the things that, and I talked to Karen and Kim about this is from the educational standpoint, we're looking at some long-term investments here that could, you know, new high school would last 50 years. What are education going to look like 20, 30, 40 years from now? And I think we need, Mr. Romersky, your input, principals, our assistant superintendents, because maybe the live participation is going to decrease. So I think we got to look at that issue too. And that's not really something an architect can help us with. That's more of an educational prediction, strategy, what have you.
I think it's probably both. I'm old enough to remember when open classrooms were the big thing and districts invested so much money. And after about 2 years, they were like, oh my gosh, what a mistake. And that was when I was coming out of undergraduate. So it's been a long time ago, less than the life of a high school though. So sometimes, you know, I think part of it is you have to make a choice, like we make choices about block or traditional scheduling, and elementary's affected, and I'm assuming that the superintendents and the superintendent and assistant superintendents keep up with that. But a lot of that is also driven by what's coming out of the colleges as well. They like latch on to new ideas and they're like, oh, this is it. And so they sell the public or sell the districts about it. Lots of elements have to come together for that. So I have another question based on what you were saying, Mr. Donato. Do you think we need, instead of waiting for that 3 to 6 month window, we actually need to start this planning it like laying the groundwork in January,
like,
basically as soon as
Without
possible?
saying we're doing X, Y, and Z, because I agree with Mr. We're not close to saying we're doing X, Y,
Right.
and Z, but letting you know this is why we're going through this. Our buildings do need some help, you know.
Mhm.
With people that have been here, you know, high school needs a lot of help, for lack of a better way of saying it, you know. Other buildings need help, and it's could be a long-term thing, you know, to prepare the public. I guess I think of myself as being a member of the public. I'd like to know the reasons why, maybe not so much what you're doing, as opposed to going out and saying, well, we have these problems and here's our solution, without we're gonna do whatever. I guess just to prepare the public ahead, as opposed to saying, again, these are our problems, we're gonna do this.
Well, I think based on this report, and I know Karen and Kim are already thinking ahead of strategic plan. We need to figure out what we think is administration and board and what we recommend, and then we take that to the public and maybe that feedback changes that. But we got to kind of come up with a long-term strategy, which isn't just the high school, it's all the schools.
No,
And
I understand.
and the board has to come together financially and building wise and determine in the administration, what's our best approach? And then I think that's when you take it out to the public, and this is why we're doing what we're doing, financial advantages, educational advantages, and it's going to be a complex process.
I want to add something to that. I think we can do both. I remember when I went on some building tours with the first set of feasibility studies and some of the things that were on the list, I was like, why is that even on the list? And then we would look over at, falling ceiling, and it was like, why isn't this on the list? But it was also eye-opening because I hadn't been in some of those schools at all. I had only been in a couple of the schools and maybe just inside to the gym for, an event or sporting, Saturday sports, that sort of thing. It was very eye-opening to me to walk through the older buildings to see what the state of it was. And when you walk in Centerville, I think it's Centerville, you walk in and right away, there's like this tiny room that's supposed to be a classroom. And it's like, who can have a classroom in there? That sort of thing. So if you can convince, I wasn't convinced until I did some of those tours that actually something was needed. And it wasn't until I saw this that I was even remotely convinced that we might need a new high school. So that's from hearing about it, going into the buildings and looking around and to just convince people what's going on. And I remember when the new schools were built, people really complained, why are you tearing down a perfectly good school? We love Farmdale. I went to school there. Why are we tearing it down? So it's a pain to do that stuff, but it's probably worth it.
One other possibility is the committee, Mike Donato, myself, Karen and Kim, we visited some new schools. Maybe other members of the board, we could do that same visit because that was helpful to me. I don't know about your thoughts, Mike. That might be helpful to some of the other board members outside of the committee to visit a couple of those schools to kind of get some ideas in our head, what potential advantages are of new construction, specifically high school. So.
You asked me the middle school we visited the last day, if we were building a new middle school, I would take you all to see.
That was Breslin, right? That
Yes.
was the one I was thinking about going to see,
Yeah, that was ideal for classroom space and the way they
Open
had things
hallways,
set up, the
daylight.
hallways and
Yeah.
everything, the
designed.
gyms, the auditorium.
Mr. Mayor, I actually do have one question from the executive summary, page 115. For buildings that are being recommended for replacement, and there's a cost for additions and renovations, is that, and then there's a corresponding condition assessment cost? Am I correct in assuming that is an either or? If we replace the building, we don't need to worry about the condition assessment cost? Or would we incur both of those costs?
No, you're correct. So if
It's an either or.
it's an either or.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? All right, we'll move ahead. Oh, go ahead, Dylan. I'm sorry.
Just gonna not to beat a dead horse, but being out in the public, especially the last couple of months, you're gonna get hit from all ends. You have the people that went to school here years ago, don't understand why we would need a new school. It was fine for them. And then you have the people that are active with their children now, going to other school districts and seeing that we're dated in a lot of things. And they want to know why we can't have what those schools have. And don't understand the number 200 to $250 million for something new. So when you're sending out the correspondence to the community, it's very important to do, but just realize you're going to continue to get hit from both ends on them arguments. I mean, I think you're an example. Before you went on those tours to those other schools, you were still in your mind renovation. And I think you've changed your mind a lot since then.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have the benefit to share that experience with a lot of people that don't want to see a tax increase or don't want to hear about us spending 200 to whatever $1 million over. And they also want to know how some of these other school districts that are not considered as affluent as us to a certain extent, how they can afford it. Why can't we? Or you understand what I'm saying? Because these are the things I hear over and over again. What do you mean we can't do this? That school district does it. I mean, I already hear about the Warwick activities building for what, $11 million. I hear this daily now. Why don't we have that? Warwick can do it. Warwick has more money than us. So you're going to be hit with those things. And it's going to be good that you're going to try to be proactive in communicating, but it's still going to be a struggle.
Yeah, very, very valid point. And there's always going to be opponents, but I think if life cycle costing is important and we have to realize how much longer is our high school going to last? You know, is it 5 years, 10 years? I mean, the cost to keep repairing it, including a new roof, eventually is going to catch up to you to the point where it's better. So it may be better to do it sooner than later. We just have to look at all those costs and the maintenance costs going up as we continue to go with that old building. So there's going to be some financial benefits, obviously, to doing it. It's not going to be a complete wash. It's not like a business where you're going to get a great return on investment, but you will get a return on investment that your maintenance costs won't go skyrocketing in the future.
I mean, again, I understand this is all preliminary and that this is the beginning of a very lengthy process involving a lot of stakeholders, but as I just look at the executive summary, it's going to be $204 million if we don't build anything. If all we do is follow the recommendations of the architects and renovate the buildings or update the buildings and don't touch the stadium, don't touch the concession stand, that's $204 million. If we build everything that they're recommending and take the mid-range approach, that's going to be about 500 million. And we are still going to have probably 80 to 100 million in renovation cost. So even given all the gifts that we have at Hempfield, and I fully understand that we are very fortunate compared to many districts, I don't know how we afford that. And it's going to be real hard to approve things without a very clear capital plan on how we make this happen, because these numbers are sobering.
Yeah, and that's a valid point, and we can't spend more than we can afford. So some things may have to be delayed. It's going to be part of a strategic financial plan as far as what we do. So, and remember, these are preliminary numbers. They're not absolute. So you can get some of those numbers down. And so it's absolutely, I don't think we can afford 500 million in even the next 10 years. So some things are probably going to have to be sacrificed, and it's going to have to be based on value for each area. So. All right. Any other questions, comments? We'll go ahead and proceed. I believe Mrs. James is going to give us an update of the LPC playground project.
Yes. Yes, I just wanted to share with you some photos that I have taken of the LPC playground. This was the last leg of this past summer's projects that we were working on. So the playground has been completed. You're seeing here the various stages. If you recall, we had some delays in getting the actual equipment in. And so we finally got that in, and this is just the various stages. There are 3 sets of equipment. There's the what you could refer to as the big toy, which you're going to see on the left-hand picture there, and the swing set. This, they call this a climbing piece. That's the 3rd piece of equipment. And then you're seeing here as well that the board in place has been added. I'm waiting right now for the final curing of that so I can let students on that, but everything is completed and should be accessible to the students within the next few days here. I think there's one more slide. Yeah, okay. No. So I just wanted to give you an update on that. As I said, that finally completes the work that we had scheduled for this past summer, and wraps up all of that. And we're busy working on next summer.
So did we get any response from our teachers and kids with the new equipment?
Oh, they're just dying to get on it. They just keep asking when. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions, Ms. James, on that project?
Thanks for finishing it.
Yes, awesome.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
job.
So we do have one buildings and ground action item. We need a motion to accept the feasibility study presented by Breslin on November 14th for use as future planning and discussion regarding district facilities. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Donato, second.
Second.
Mrs. Johnston. All those in favor? Wait,
hold-
no,
hold
any
on.
discussion? I'm
Just-
sorry.
no, with discussion.
Go ahead.
What does accepting the feasibility study mean?
Karen, you want to explain?
Sure. So we're accepting what has been presented to us as those things that we need to work on. So the capital plan, our master facilities plan come as a result of that. So this is our starting point.
Okay.
It doesn't bind us to anything.
It
doesn't.
doesn't mean those numbers are absolute. It just gives
We
us
agreed to
an
nothing.
an idea what problems there are and where we need work.
I'm not necessarily comfortable with the idea of accepting a plan. I mean, we have the information, we will use it in the manner that we see fit.
It's accepting
That's exactly what it's saying, Grant.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you're doing.
Not
Pardon me?
That's exactly what you're doing with this acceptance.
Then why does that require official action of the board?
Because of the expense and the effort that's gone into this action, and it's laying groundwork for the future.
I guess I'm still struggling to understand what we are accepting. We have the information, they have worked hard, we appreciate that. I would not want this board or some future board for anyone to come back and say, you accepted the feasibility study. And that has happened before. We have accepted other things, and then that acceptance has been, people have attempted to morph that acceptance into some obligation of the board. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen here, but I don't see the purpose in accepting this. I don't know what that does.
I would just say from a district standpoint, it allows the district accepts it, it's concluded, it's done, and as it states, its use is only for future planning and discussion.
Correct.
There is nothing in terms of binding this board, any future boards to any of the work in here, because
Right.
all of that still has to come forward, but it wraps up this part of the process. and
Okay,
Allows us to. begin
Again,
the
why
next
does
step.
that require official? I understand all of that. Why does that require
It's just
official
been,
action on the part of the board?
it's just been good practice that we've learned and heard about through this process that other districts do to conclude this part of the process, and allows then move on to the next phase. And it ends this part of this whole process that we've been working through since last April.
Grant, I would also add that it's a formality to the position that the board has taken, that we are undertaking and seeking the advice of outside firms with the level of expertise to help us define and organize all of the cost and the current status, if you will, of our facilities district-wide, which is a task that
ordinarily we wouldn't be able to accomplish. So we've hired people within the community or outside the community, or experts, if you will, to take on that task at our behest. So this is the culmination of that process where we're saying, okay, to Mr. Bremersky's point, we are now accepting that process as being completed, and we're moving into the next phase.
And again, I appreciate that explanation, Mr. Mauer. We voted many months ago to commission a study and to pay the architects for their work. So I'm not clear that what this secondary vote does, other than potentially raise a point of debate in the future about, oh, this was accepted and what does that acceptance mean? Now, if people want to have a vote on the record, I'd be open to changing the language of this motion to make entirely clear that this is without any commitment or obligation going forward. But I would not support this as it's currently drafted because I think it opens an unnecessary Pandora's box down the road.
I see your point, Mr. Keener, but I do think we're splitting hairs here. We're really just accepting this. It is common practice to do that. And so I would suggest we just move forward with taking a vote on this and feel free to vote however you feel comfortable.
That's kind of where my head is, unless a number of board members have the same concerns. Grant, you obviously don't have to vote in favor. Is there anyone else that has concerns about accepting this feasibility study as we just worded? Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor? All those opposed?
I believe Mr. Wagner is online.
Mr. Wagner, are you with us?
Hello. Can you hear me?
I guess he's not. Okay.
I'm online.
Oh, he
Hello.
was?
Yep, I'm here. You there? Hello?
Yep.
I'm here.
Did
I
you hear?
approve.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I hear everything. I've been online for a while. So yes, I'm in favor. All good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that was 8 in favor, 1 against, correct? Okay. All right, I believe that finishes the buildings and ground. So I'll now turn it over to Mr. Mauer for our finance committee section of the meeting.
Good evening. We'll commence immediately since we're at 20 minutes till 6 and we're making good progress here. The first item on the finance side of things is the issue of an accelerated budget opt-out resolution. I would recommend at this point that we move forward with this because at this point we haven't spent, number one, an inordinate amount of time on the development of this year's forthcoming budget. And two, we don't have the final results yet of our annual audit in hand. So that said, I would recommend to the board that we opt out, and I will let Mrs. Hall add to whatever she needs to there.
I mean, you pretty well covered it. We have to make a decision 110 days prior to the primary. And that date is January 4th is the 110 days. So we don't have a lot of time to decide whether we're going to take exceptions or whether we're going to stay within the index. Please keep in mind the index is 6.3% this year, which is significantly higher than it has been. So if we are going, I'm looking for the board's feedback here. If we're going to go for the opt-out resolution, I will have it on the December 5th meeting for approval.
And that basically means we're taking all the exceptions, but it does not?
No,
Yeah.
we're not
It
taking
means
exception.
we're
It
not
means we're
taking
staying
exceptions. Okay,
below
Yeah.
within the index.
okay.
Unless
You're
you,
recommending, I'm sorry, go ahead. You're recommending that we do not give ourselves the flexibility to take on exceptions? Or that you are recommending? that we
I am
do
not.
You are not recommending?
No, I'm recommending we do the opt-out resolution like we did last year, that we will stay within the index, which is 6.3.
to simplify this, unless you intend to raise taxes as a board above 6.3%, there's no point in
Correct.
considering any of the opt-in the options. So I don't expect that this board, and I don't want to project, plans to raise taxes above 6.3% in the coming year. So I would recommend we go with the advisement of adopting the accelerated budget opt-out resolution.
I agree with Mr. Wogomuth and hence my recommendation. Furthermore, it also reinforces the commitment we made to the Department of Revenue that we would not seek exceptions if we were not intending to utilize them. And given our history, we're not going to go above 6.3%. Okay, we don't need to vote on this. This was just an issue for discussion, but thank you. Is there any other discussion or opinion on that? All right, then we will move forward. Dr. Musser, I believe you have the floor.
Thank you. So, those of you that have been on the board a number of years, this proposal will look somewhat familiar. How about now? All right, better. All right, so for those of you that are on the board, very similar proposal. Speech therapists are one of the positions in the district that is controlled by caseload. So every number of years, while we evaluate caseloads yearly, we come to the board and seek additional staff to handle our increased caseloads. So I wanted to provide a little bit of the background for you this evening, how many individuals we have. I also want to share that we have 9 full-time, as it states there. We have 2 that are full-time with diagnostic K, which means they're carrying a half caseload. And then we have 2 part-time, which are obviously carrying half a caseload. I also included the number of students we are currently servicing through speech services. And I also included the number of students that are currently in an evaluation process, which will highly likely yield some additional students requiring speech services. During this year, because of a unexpected leave, we also have some compensatory ed that we need to fill. And that's primarily in LPC, Farmdale, and the high school. And basically what we've done with these families is we've worked with them to say that while we currently don't have speech services available, they're given a certain hours per year. We're just going to load those hours in the second half of the year to accommodate the caseloads. So our request to you at this point is we really do need to increase our capacity and add an additional speech therapist to remain in compliance with caseloads. Sir.
What salary would you anticipate? Like, where would you anticipate them coming in on the schedule? And do you anticipate having a decent applicant pool?
Fortunately, we just had an applicant pool for a opening we already had. So I feel strongly about securing a successful candidate. As far as what they'll be compensated at, speech therapists are a master's level teaching position. So they are going to be a little more on the expensive side, and it's going to depend largely on their years of experience.
Okay. How many, this person, that you referenced, how many years do they have?
I don't have a specific person for this position. I mean, the one we brought in. The one for the recent position?
Oh, I thought you said that there was, that you have a pool of candidates in mind.
We do. So the opening that we're currently looking to fill that isn't directly related to this would be in addition to that, is a replacement position, and they have like 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
Is this contract just based on caseload? So it's semi-temporary? I don't know what else to call it. It's not a permanent position.
Right.
It is
This
permanent.
will be a permanent position. So we try to manage caseloads from year to year, and we
Mhm.
keep shifting. So what people have one year, they won't have the next year. We're beyond that capacity, to be quite frank with the board. I'm not 100% sure that one full actually keeps us in compliance. If we look at our special ed growth over the last couple of years, but we've tried to just raise when we had to and then be frugal with caseload management. We will continue to do so, but I can't move these pieces around anymore and make the map work.
I'm just recalling some discussions we had several years
Yeah.
ago about, do we need one? Do we not need one? They're hard to find.
If you're doing the "I told you so" to me, that you offered me more than and I should have taken it, you are accurate. I was wrong.
I wasn't saying I told you so. I just know that
I
it was something that was like in
Yes,
flux.
it's-
And, but it was also, we
it-
couldn't find
it-
a qualified candidate,
And,
if
and
I
thank,
recall.
that is the other, and to Mr. Keener's point as well, that is the other concern with these positions. These are very difficult positions to fill, so I would like to get started on this as soon as I can with the permission of the board.
Is there I assume if we get a full-time person, we're going to reduce contracted services. So is there some savings with this?
I'm not even able to get contracted services right now.
So
So,
basically it means our students aren't having their needs met. Some
well,
of them.
that's why we have the compensatory ed I referenced. So in most of the IEPs, they're written that it is a certain amount of hours over a course of a year. So what we're doing right now is we're just moving those hours around. So maybe not everybody's getting hours now. I just need to make sure by the end of the year that they receive the hours that's identified in their plan.
Will this, it's compensatory time, now, we're not at the halfway point of the school year yet. If we can get someone hired quickly, then there should not be a problem, because I'm thinking
Correct.
if we don't get them hired, then we're technically violating their
Yes, correct.
IEPs.
Correct. And it is very difficult to get contracted services to Mr. Maris's point. So that's why I really need this at this point in time.
So you're saying, just so I understand, you have somebody that you're ready to hire?
No, I'm saying we need a new position. I'm saying we just had a replacement position, so I know there's quality candidates out there. We just went through an interview process,
Right,
so
right.
we had more than one applicant, so I know there's quality applicants out there.
So let's cut to the chase. Do you think your number two from the last search would be interested in this job if we approve it?
I hope so.
Okay.
So just so I'm clear on it, some of these are not full-time, right?
Correct.
So could we not take some of these, it looks like they're part-time teaching other classrooms?
It's a diagnostic K program, so that's part of their whole program. They're in with the diagnostic K. And it needs to be a speech therapist. I can't have that subbed out with another position, so it technically lowers their caseload. It cuts it in half.
Okay, so it's not like the ones that are half teaching, half speech therapy, half doing something else, could be a full-time speech therapist.
No. And we took those positions back from the IU and at a huge savings to the district. So it's one of those areas that we recently took back, and I don't want to start contracting back out.
What, if the caseload goes down in a year or two, what could that speech therapist be doing instead? Are they going to be dual certified, or is there options for that?
I would be amazed if our caseloads ever go down far enough that would actually constitute a person, but there is enough movement, and we do have part-time people looking for other opportunities. We can certainly look at that if that becomes, but it's not a contract that we're going to be burdened with moving forward.
Having had a child who really needed speech therapy, I hesitate to think where she would have been if we couldn't have gotten the services when she needed them. So what do you need from us to move forward for this position? I mean, yeah, we need this filled. So what's next
So it would be approval at the December 5th board meeting
for the position?
to add the position because it is not budgeted.
Okay.
Mr. Wogelma, you had a comment?
I support the position, and I had the opportunity to ask some of my tough questions in advance of this meeting. And a few of them have been touched on in this meeting. And so typically, whenever there's an unbudgeted position request that just comes out of the sky, as I say with this, I'm always going to ask the difficult questions. I think my only comment is I always prefer whenever you can plan ahead and you can make sure these are part of the budget.
Yeah.
Moving forward, I realize that's not always possible, but whenever that's possible, that should really be the approach that we take. That allows us to plan better. It also allows us to appropriately maybe not question, is this just, a situation where maybe we're putting a body in a position, which is not the case here. So I do support us moving forward with adding this to the December 5th agenda for approval.
I guess I do I just have a general question. What was the number 700 some kids that
Yes.
needed? Is that as a percentage going up over the past decade, would you say?
Yes, and also, depending what services we're taking back from the IU, like autistic support carries a very large percentage of speech services. So it takes up a large number of our caseload. We also have been seeing increasing EI, early intervention numbers. So we also have our biggest class coming in this year. So that's why I also said I'm not 100% sure this totally takes care of us, but it definitely positions us to move into the next year.
Thank you.
It's important for us to remember we become a destination school district because of the quality of services we provide. And now we're in a mandatory position. All right, moving forward.
One quick thing, sorry
Yes.
if you can all hear me. So I guess I'm glad we're talking about this. And Dr. Musser, right now, how stretched thin is our current staff as it relates to speech therapy, learning support? How stretched thin? What's the bandwidth look like today? The reason I ask is not that I want to be adding unnecessarily, not that I want to be adding to this discussion or adding headcount here, but is one going to cover it based on whatever your answer is in terms of bandwidth?
Well, one is certainly going to help us through this budget year, to Mr. Wogamu's point. I have a lot of variables. As far as where we're stretched, we are stretched extremely thin. We do have variables though in EI and kids that are currently in the evaluation process that it really does make it difficult to answer 100% one way or another. In the past, the districts, the way that we've operated is if we had to, we stretched a little thinner and then added after the fact, as opposed to running heavy in the front of that. Especially as we look at potential programs, the district looks to, maybe look at returning from the IU at some point.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Understood. Makes sense.
I'm glad he understood because I didn't understand. Were you saying we're running thin?
We're running very thin.
So where
I'm very.
else?
What'd you
Hence
say,
my
ma'am?
question, right?
Where
Yeah.
else?
Right.
I mean, other
Yeah.
than speech therapy, and you mentioned early intervention, is that like kindergarten?
Oh,
I
no,
don't know what
I'm
is
saying under early
involved, but-
intervention, there'll be some of the students coming into early intervention and we don't know who will come and who won't come. We
Right.
don't know what services they'll qualify or not qualify, which makes it
Right.
hard for me to predict who will require speech services.
So these are students that you anticipate coming in, or they're already here?
There's students that are already signed up for our EI. Yes, we have a very large EI class coming in.
And then we also have students currently who need the services. So
Correct.
it's twofold. It's the kids we know and the kids that we
Correct.
know are
Processing.
coming, but we just don't
Mhm.
know exactly when or which
Or how
program they
many.
would come to, ours
Sure.
or elsewhere.
So what does stretched too thin mean? Where do you need? What else? What does the department need?
I'm asking for what we need at this point, but to Mr. Wogomit's point, as the budget year progresses, we will have a more accurate number as we have the EI meetings. We know who's coming in, and it might be something that is placed in the budget in an upcoming year if that need is required to be in our caseload limits.
I guess in the end, my concern, excuse me, Mr. Keno, it is a destination. We want to provide everything that we're required to, obviously, and maybe a little beyond that,
Absolutely.
when possible, would be nice, but not just with our special needs, but across the board. And I think that's just something that I feel like is super important and maybe not wait till the last minute. I understand you're managing budget, you're managing staff, and you're also looking at the student's need. And I understand what Mr. Vogelmuth was saying about planning ahead. I could tell you how we budgeted in the lean years in the military, but I don't want to see any kid to fall through the crack and not get what they need for 6 months because we didn't hire somebody.
Ma'am, if I thought that was the case, I wouldn't be sitting here only requesting one if I thought some student was
Okay.
going to go unserviced at this point. But I do want the board to understand, to your point, that if we are coming back or there's a budgeted position next year for speech, that we understand why.
Okay.
I appreciate the discussion. If nothing else, it goes on record that we've had this discussion and I share in Mrs. Johnston's sentiments, right? I mean, The last thing any of us would ever want to see is anyone fall through the cracks or not get the services that they need, or that they are supposed to be getting or that they could be getting, because, we waited too long, or because we didn't, and Dr. Muster obviously we trust your assessment, no doubt, of what is needed at this very moment. But I'm glad we're having this conversation. And frankly, the reason I brought up the bandwidth piece and is one going to cut it. So, let's keep a close eye on this one, because our learning support students, they obviously are in, they have specific needs, and it's one area that we definitely want to make sure we're not falling short at. So, or short on. So appreciate the discussion, and let's make sure we note this one.
So are you planning to post, when will we see this next? When you have a candidate, or do we need to approve the posting since it's unbudgeted?
So the next board meeting on the 5th, we'll have it on there as an add to staff, an
Okay.
unbudgeted ad.
Given that these people aren't a dime a dozen, why are we waiting until then? Or do you plan to launch an anticipated search in the
I
meantime?
mean, we do have candidates that we've already interviewed.
I'm sorry?
We do have candidates that we've already interviewed. So, I mean,
Okay.
we've got that part done.
And we
Okay,
work.
I guess what I'm saying is, I don't want to risk losing a good person that, if I'm reading between the lines, y'all seem to like, just because when we're here and we have a quorum, we can approve this right now. And
Well, I think it sounds like we're already interviewing, and until we give an offer, I don't think we can approve that,
well,
correct?
no, but that's not what Mrs. Hall said. We have to approve,
You'll approve
to
a
approve
new
the position
position next Tuesday.
right. So
And
I'm
then-
saying, why are we waiting till next Tuesday to approve
Right.
the new position?
I think it's okay if we just give them direction to move forward and then the approval will happen on December 5th. You're just looking for direction, not a vote, correct?
Correct. And what we, as always have done, as we are interviewing for positions, we will work through that process. If we find a successful candidate, we notify the board in advance. That person's able to start prior to. So we will continue our process, just like we would. And then we're sharing that information now. We'll vote on it next week, and we will continue moving so that we can get the person. And we anticipate, based on the feedback, recognizing that you're not voting tonight, but based on the perception of the feedback, that we will be moving forward with a successful vote next week. Things could change, but we'll be okay.
All right. We'll move on to the next item. We have 4 contracts that are up for approval at the December 5th meeting. 2 involve healthcare benefit costs. One is for our middle school students, and another affects our advertising and donation to the school district. So those 4 items are coming up for review and approval on December 5th. I have no finance action items to vote on. We have no new business to discuss unless Mr.
I do
Berners has
actually
something.
have just a little bit of new business here. This time of year, actually next Tuesday, the board will begin its new year, if you will, new term. And every time we have a change in board, which we will have next Tuesday, I think it's important to thank our board members as a whole, collectively, individually, for all that you do. You give tireless efforts, time, energy, and effort away from your family to be here on many nights. It's a voluntary position, though you're elected by the community. You serve with grace and dignity, and your heart is always in the right place, looking out for our students and our staff, trying to figure out what's best and how we grow our programs and how we keep Hempfield as that destination district. And I know, at times board members don't often like that public acknowledgement, particularly in those meetings. But I sincerely do thank each and every one of you for all of your work. Mr. Maurer, you will be ending your term as a board member shortly, but you have served for now over 12 years.
Yes, thank you.
And we just greatly appreciate all that you have done for the district. You've shown great care, great passion. You have spent many, many hours working with the finance committee members, the board as a whole, helping the district stay on track with its finances and making sure that that is kind of ingrained in not only board members, but the administration to make sure that we're always looking ahead and thinking strategically. But I would say more importantly, you've also given a lot of your heart in everything that you've done, and you've shown great care for each and every one of us as members of the Hempfield family, and you've treated us as members of, in a sense, your family, and we thank you for that. You have gone to great lengths to provide great opportunities for our students and staff over the years, and we just sincerely thank you. And on behalf of the district and the community, a heartfelt thanks for everything you've done, and to show our appreciation in a small way, but in a great way. We have for you, always remember us by, note a lifetime pass to all of our events here at the district. You need to come back and just thank you for all of it.
You'll certainly see mine.
Thank you. Thank you.
I normally don't like the recognition, but thank you. It's been a pleasure to serve this district. I'm actually excited by the tone of the strategic plan and the board's zeal with which they're looking at this thing. These are the most important things that a school board can do, is set the tone for the strategy and setting the compass headings for the district moving forward. And that's where I'd love to see the district spend more of its time. So that said, thank you.
Thank you. And again, appreciate all of your hard work. And while there will be additional changes, I'm going to respect people's preferences, but I will have a different conversation.
Sure.
And thank you, Mr. Gordon. So, thank you, everybody. That's the end of my new business.
That's it for this evening. The next Buildings and Grounds meeting then is December 19th at 5 p.m. May I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
For Mr. Donato, thank you. All in favor?
In favor.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.